So this is something that's been on my mind since the PS5 launched, and the issue has only gotten worse ever since. Before I even get into the topic of this video, I just want to get it out there that I am a huge PlayStation fan. Even calling me a PlayStation fanboy wouldn't be that far off. I've owned every single PlayStation console and played almost every single exclusive. I've even gotten into physical fights over PlayStation versus Xbox debates during the PS3 days. I definitely have a bias toward PlayStation, and I don't think that will ever change. All of that is to say that I have truly been disappointed in the path Sony's taken since the launch of PS5. They've been very anti-consumer lately, and it's getting pretty hard to defend these days. We all remember the amazing marketing decisions Sony made for the launch of PS4. It seemed like Xbox was doing everything wrong and Sony was doing everything right.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
PlayStation.
I was a huge fan of the PS3 exclusives, but PS4 was on a totally different level for me. I couldn't contain my excitement for games like Infamous Second Son, God of War, Uncharted 4, The Last of Us 2, even though that ended up disappointing me in the end. Even new franchises like Horizon Zero Dawn and Spider-Man PS4 ended up being so amazing. I'd even go as far as saying PS4 was a contender for being the greatest console to ever release. During the PS4 days, it seemed as if Sony could walk on water or turn water into wine. They were that great. Then the marketing for PS5 started, and this is where Sony started to lose my faith a little. I was more hyped for PS5 than any other console ever. Whenever there was a new reveal for PS5, I would drop whatever I was doing at the time to catch up on the news. The reveal event for PS5 blew my mind. They showed off Miles Morales, the sequel to Horizon, even teased God of War. They announced backwards compatibility for PS4, which I'll get into that later. And we're saying the right things like we believe in generations, in contrast to Xbox where they said they would release games for Xbox One for at least a year after the Series X launch. The SSD seemed more impressive than anything Microsoft talked about for the Series X. Everything was like honey dripped into my ears. And then, news after the event shows started to leak out, and it showed me Sony was lying right to our faces. They claimed to believe in generations, but almost every game they announced for PS5 is also coming to PS4. Games like Miles Morales and Horizon were shown off as if they were PS5 only games, only for Sony to slyly reveal that they are actually cross-gen. Right now, the only games that are PS5 exclusive are Demon's Souls, Godfall, and the upcoming Returnal and Ratchet & Clank. I would mention Destruction All-Stars, but who really cares? After that, what is even PS5 exclusive? Horizon is confirmed coming to PS4, we're still unsure about God of War, and the future is even murkier after that. How exactly is this believing in generations? I'm sure someone will try to counter with, but not everyone has a PS5. But that shouldn't even be a factor if Sony's mantra is we believe in generations. Why even communicate that and then immediately do the exact opposite when it comes to the games they are releasing? When it comes to new games, their priority should be PS5 because that is the console they are trying to push. It seems like they are trying to toe both lines and makes the messaging murky and makes it seem like Sony is lying to our face. I wouldn't have as much of a problem if Sony didn't say we believe in generations, but the fact is they did say it, and the fact that they went back on their word on that is scummy. They made it seem like you have to buy the new console to play these games or else you would miss out. Compare that to Microsoft, who has been pretty transparent from the get-go. We know exactly what the future of the Series X is going to be, and Microsoft has communicated that pretty clearly. They outright said they are going to support both the Xbox One and the Xbox Series X for at least a year, so everyone knew what to expect before the launch of the console. Microsoft got a lot of flack for saying this, and people pointed at Sony for their stance, claiming that Sony had the right idea when they were doing the same as Microsoft the entire time. This is where I feel like Sony drops the ball the hardest. Xbox has been doing backwards compatibility and it's been almost flawless. You can play almost every 360 game you can imagine, and Microsoft even figured out a way to boost frame rate and resolution on some of these games. It blew my mind to see the first Red Dead Redemption or Assassin's Creed running in 4K resolution. I appreciate that when I'm feeling nostalgic, I can just boot up Black Ops 1 and play through the campaign or marathon the Gears of War games for the first time ever. Meanwhile on PS5 we can play PS4 games and That's the extent of it. Now, before you go off on me, I already know it's not as easy as flipping a switch to get PS3 games to work on PS5. I already know that PS3 is running on a cell processor that creates compatibility problems. But from a consumer point of view, Sony just has to make it work somehow. This is even more so the case now that they've announced they're shutting down the storefront for PS3. Sony needs to figure out a solution to get PS3 games to run on PS5 somehow. There are great games that you just can't play anymore from the PS3 era that I'm sure people would love to play. And before someone points out PlayStation Now, I'm just gonna come right out and say it. PlayStation Now is garbage. Streaming games will never be a preferred way to play video games, and this was proven by the failure of Stadia and everything else like it before that. At least not until ISPs stop holding people's internet speeds back because of their greed. Even then, PlayStation Now is still ass just because of their holes in the catalog. For example, one day I started a PlayStation Now subscription to play some of the PS3 games. I saw Resistance 3 and I got super excited, so that made me want to search for Resistance 1 so I could just marathon the series. But to my surprise, it wasn't even there, and I was just astounded. Why the fuck is Resistance 3 the only game in the series available on the PS Now? There's also no hope that Sony will eventually add these games into the service because they haven't added any PS3 games in over a year and a half. It's just ridiculous that entire generations of games are just not available to be played, and it seems as if Sony just doesn't care, no matter how much their fans beg for this. I would even give in and subscribe to PS Now if I knew that I could play the games that I wanted to, or if they even promised to add them, but it's proven Sony just doesn't care, so that's just free money they're losing out on basically. Imagine how successful PS Now would be if they just put the PS3 games people wanted to play most on there. And I know there's gonna be that one guy that says, I didn't buy a new console to play old games. And that argument always makes me just want to scream. Maybe you don't care about backwards compatibility, but there are people that do. Just because you don't want something doesn't mean that there isn't a demand for it, and it's not like Sony would prioritize backwards compatibility over making amazing exclusives, so it wouldn't take any resources away from what you want. If Microsoft can make backwards compatibility work on Xbox, Sony can find out a way too. Sony's excuse for not even attempting backwards compatibility is pretty pathetic as well. About 4 years ago, Jim Ryan, who is the CEO of Sony Interactive, said in an interview, "When we've dabbled with backwards compatibility, I can say it is one of those features that is much requested, but not actually used much." That, and I was at a Gran Turismo event recently where they had PS1, PS2, PS3, and PS4 games. And the PS1 and PS2 games, they looked ancient. Why would anybody play this? And this quote made me want to pound my head into the TV. This just screams backwards compatibility isn't profitable enough for us to do it. We'd rather sell it to you as a remaster. And I just want to reiterate what I said before, all my opinions are always in the perspective of the consumer, unless said otherwise. So that being said, fuck you, Sony. I know you are a company, but it would be nice if you show that you do something consumer friendly for once. We buy your admittedly amazing games. The least you could do is at least respect the fans enough to say something more graceful and respectful than "why would anyone play this?" I can respect Sony's stance more if they acknowledge that they see their fans asking for backwards compatibility and that it just isn't in their plans, or that the architecture of the PS3 makes it too difficult to do. But to say "why would anybody play this?" is just so disrespectful to your consumers who is asking to play those games. Also, saying that backwards compatibility isn't a feature that is used often is honestly an outright lie. When on Xbox you had backwards compatibility games that topped the most played charts or even had boosts in sales. Overall, I just think Sony needs to find a way to make backwards compatibility work, and that would go a long way in getting in good graces with their fans, especially after their blunder with the way they handled shutting down the legacy storefronts. Even if their solution is to lock those games into a PlayStation Now subscription but make them downloadable, I would gladly pay for that option. Man, oh man, Microsoft has lapped Sony maybe twice when it comes to this department. Any normal person with the brain would tell you that Game Pass has been a huge hit for Microsoft. Paying $10 a month for a huge catalog of games on demand is a gamer's dream. And that's not even mentioning how all Xbox exclusives will be available on Game Pass day one. However, as great as Game Pass is, and as much as I would love to have it on PlayStation, I know it's not something in the cards for Sony, and I don't really fault them for that. Microsoft wipes their ass with money as a company, and Sony just can't compete with throwing around money like that for a Game Pass competitor. Microsoft would win that battle every time. I also don't see Sony adding their exclusives to Game Pass because that would honestly be dumb for them to do. Game Pass is great for the consumer, but it isn't profitable for Microsoft. They have to throw money at these companies to make deals to get them on their service, but Sony can't eat losses like Microsoft can. But that doesn't mean they don't need some sort of answer for Game Pass. This has become extremely apparent with the news that MLB The Show 21 will be coming to Game Pass day one. If you didn't know, MLB The Show is developed by San Diego Studios, which is a PlayStation studio. It's kind of mind-blowing that a PlayStation studio game is coming to Game Pass day one, while PlayStation players have to pay $70 for that same game. Even if the publisher being the MLB on Xbox probably led to this deal, the fact that it was even allowed to happen is just weird. I don't really know what Sony could even do to combat Game Pass, but they just have to figure out an answer. I could probably go on with more gripes I have with Sony at the moment, but those are just small issues that don't affect things in the grand scheme of things. Things like how Sony wanted to deny cross-platform gaming at first, the recent party chat changes, the horrendous PS5 UI, and shutting down legacy storefronts without even giving developers an advance warning. These are all just minor grievances I have, but not to the extent of the issues I expanded upon. Like I said before, I really love PlayStation, and it would take a lot to go wrong for that to change for me. As of right now, PlayStation is still the clear winner when it comes to exclusive game quality. I'd even say better than Nintendo. It goes a long way and is the main reason why Sony's recent decisions haven't caused them to sink just yet. But if Sony doesn't start making better decisions, what will happen when Xbox's first party studios start making banger games that can compete with PlayStation? What ground will Sony have to stand on then? What do you guys think about the path Sony has taken lately? Do you agree with me, or do you think I'm just totally off base or don't care about what Sony is doing at all? Let me know if you want to see more videos like this by subscribing so that you don't miss the next one. You can also follow me on Twitter, where you can watch my mental deterioration while also expanding on my thoughts on the things I talk about. I'll leave the links in the description. Thank you for watching.